as I hear you say, I'm wondering, it's obviously not something that you mathematically, strategically access, because you're saying it's happening in this really natural, authentic way where it leads you. What roles made you feel that way? Or which ones are the ones that have a strong memory for that for you, where you went, oh, wow, this led me to a place I didn't imagine it would?
I mean, it's interesting because I think I undulate from the extreme analytical, over-ruminating, calculated analysis of something, and then into the sort of, you know, the more sort of mad scientist, you know, intuitive sort of approach. But they go hand in hand, you know, the sort of the polarity between the two, I find is really helpful. And I'd say I did a film with George Miller, part of the Mad Max series called Furiosa. And that for me was probably the greatest example of that kind of character taking over and being led into a place which you didn't plan for, but the sort of improvisational portion of it, or the experimentation of it, or the, you know, throw caution to the wind and just leap in head first, came from months and months, or actually a couple of years, because I had read the script 2 years before. And while I was doing other films, I was thinking about that character. It began to sort of infect my thoughts, you know, daily, and to the point where I had to kind of try and put it aside because I had to get back to the film I was currently on. And I was talking to George Miller about that, and he goes, well, selfishly, I don't mind. You know, you can give our character more of that. And it was the first time I kind of started journaling as the character and started doing you know, he was a pretty ugly, villainous individual on paper and on screen as well, I guess. But I had to find a way to sort of understand and empathize with his position, and from his point of view, he was the hero, as in, you know, everyone's. And so by the time I got to set, everything that I'd sort of planned began to fall away, and each day was, again, kind of an experiment and a real sort of deep dive into the psyche of this individual and what were the sort of justifications for his actions, which were perceived from one angle as, you know, horrific, but from his angle and his position, from where his people were standing, survival of the fittest. And I've had that a few times in my career, but that certainly stands out as one of the biggest ones.
I feel like there's so much empathy in becoming an actor, because you're trying to understand this character that you don't know, but you have to kind of get to know, and you may not feel what they feel. One of my friends is an acting coach in LA, and he invited me to just go watch one of his sessions with Actors at Night. And so I went to see him a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, if anyone feels lonely, they should just go to an acting class. Like, everyone was so encouraging of each other, and there was this real camaraderie that everyone had, and everyone would give each other feedback. Mm-hmm. And all of it was about dissecting character and emotion and feeling. And I was like, wow, I've learned more from this than, you know, about human emotion and about human potential and depth than you would going to a class, because there's so much study and there's so many layers and there's so many. And as I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm like, there's such a, but it sounds like you love that. Like, it sounds like
I love
that.
it for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've always had a big interest in psychology and understanding our sort of inner workings of our soul and our psyche, and us as human beings, and how we interact with one another, and nature versus nurture, and the how and why of it all. And for me, there's just something therapeutic about the experience of acting and putting on the clothes of a completely different individual and having the chance to look at the world through a different lens. Yeah. And I see that as a real sort of gift compared to a lot of sort of, I guess, you know, our working life. There's just an abundance of creativity and exploration there, which I find, you know, incredibly helpful. Just even, I mean, from each character, I find I come out, whether or not I agree with the character or not, I've been able to sit in their shoes for a moment and look at the world in a different way. And I think there's a sort of a humility that's forced upon you in that sense, which I find a really interesting sort of experiment. And as you've pointed out, I think very healthy for all of us to do. You know, I know a lot of directors that, you know, have never acted and it scares the hell out of them, but they go and do acting classes for that reason, to understand the psychology, but also understand how you're going to come at this character, or what the position is that you might take, and as opposed to standing on this side of the fence and making assumptions, stepping into those different environments certainly, I don't know, gives you a greater sense of agency over it.
Yeah. Has there ever been a character you played where you felt, I wish that one didn't rub off on me, or left a bit of them with you that you're like,
I mean, I find it's not that the lines get blurred, but I've been on press tours defending my character, and then being tapped on the shoulder and like, the guy killed a bunch of people. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Besides that part, you know? And so it's sort of, I don't think the state I will get myself in for certain characters through the day, a very heightened sort of fight or flight type state, where I am. There's a sort of feels like there's electricity running through my bones, and especially when there's a lot of dialogue and there's a lot of reaction, a lot going on. That I find very hard to switch off. It's not so much the character that I'm trying to shake; it's the energy that's required to play that character.
Right.
And I find it with one of the hardest things the high to come off is improvisational sort of comedy, you know. And I remember doing. When we did Ragnarok, there was a lot of that in there, and it was a very new version of the character. And I would get into this sort of ecstatic, sort of, you know, electrified state, and be kind of drinking coffee and Red Bull and slamming, you know, energy drink to try and elevate that more. And then it was like, well, I'd have to kind of rein that in and get home, and I'd just be sort of twitching, and I'd, you know, go to the gym and try to come off that. So I find that the residual effect of the state of the character more so than the character.
It's more about getting into character.
Yeah, because you could put that. I don't necessarily have to believe I am the, you know, leader of an army or whatever. It's more, well, what would I feel in that situation that you then embody, and then that sort of takes over.
Yeah, that's fascinating to hear.